Margot Robbie entered the high-end jewelry boutique with understated elegance. She wore dark jeans paired with a simple black turtleneck, her attire a stark contrast to the opulence surrounding her. Her hair fell loosely around her shoulders, and her makeup was minimal, highlighting her natural beauty rather than masking it. The establishment exuded luxury from every corner. Display cases gleamed under carefully positioned lighting, showcasing rare gemstones and precious metals. Professionally dressed staff moved between wealthy clientele, their voices maintained at a respectful murmur as they presented exclusive collections to discerning customers. Margot navigated through the displays with unhurried confidence, examining the craftsmanship of various pieces. Despite her celebrity status, her modest attire caused several staff members to overlook her presence, assuming she wasn't a serious customer. Across the showroom stood Victoria Winchester, the embodiment of conspicuous wealth. Her immaculate white fur coat draped perfectly across her shoulders, complementing her meticulously manicured nails. Multiple diamond pieces adorned her fingers and wrists, capturing the light with every slight movement. The exclusive Hermès bag positioned precisely on her forearm completed her carefully curated image of affluence. Her expensive perfume created an olfactory announcement of her presence. Victoria held a diamond necklace up to the light, scrutinizing it with practiced precision. Her companion waited silently beside her, anticipating her verdict on the piece. It was then that Victoria's attention shifted to Margot. Her gaze fixed on the actress's casual attire, specifically targeting the absence of designer logos or obvious displays of wealth. Something in Victoria's expression hardened. Tilting her head slightly toward her companion, she spoke with deliberate volume, ensuring her words would carry. "Are they letting just anyone in now? Look at this, jeans and a black sweater. Does she think she's at Target?" Her companion responded with a subtle smirk but offered no verbal agreement. Several employees noticed the exchange, sharing quick glances of discomfort but choosing not to intervene. Margot heard the remark clearly. Rather than reacting, she continued examining the jewelry before her, a small enigmatic smile playing at her lips. Her complete lack of acknowledgement made Victoria's attempt at humiliation feel hollow and ineffective. Yet this absence of reaction only fueled Victoria's determination. She adjusted her fur coat with exaggerated precision, stepping forward with renewed purpose. What she didn't realize was that her behavior was about to catalyze one of the most significant lessons of her privileged life. The atmosphere within the jewelry boutique shifted imperceptibly as Victoria decided mere passive-aggressive comments weren't sufficient. Her critical gaze methodically assessed Margot from head to toe, mentally cataloging every element of her understated appearance, from the simple jeans to the unadorned turtleneck, her unstyled hair, and minimal cosmetics. An unfamiliar irritation rose within Victoria's chest. The diamond necklace slipped through her manicured fingers as she admired her reflection in the polished display glass, the jewel's brilliance perfectly matching her self-importance. The brunette companion with her impeccable bun leaned closer. "Something wrong?" she inquired, noticing Victoria's changing demeanor. Victoria delayed her response, lifting her chin slightly before replying with deliberate volume. "Are they letting just anyone in now? Look at that. Jeans and a black top. Does she think she's at Target?" She made no effort to moderate her voice, the comment was intentionally projected for maximum audience impact. Her friend responded with a noncommittal smirk, not fully endorsing the sentiment but clearly intrigued by the contrast between Margot's understated presence and the store's atmosphere of exclusive luxury. Her gaze lingered on Margot, attempting to comprehend how someone not outwardly displaying wealth could navigate this environment with such natural ease. A store associate who had been arranging an exclusive watch collection glanced up discreetly, exchanging a meaningful look with a colleague behind the counter. Both silently assessed the developing situation but remained professionally detached. Margot, who had certainly heard the remark, maintained her composed demeanor. Without the slightest acknowledgement, she continued examining the sapphire and diamond rings displayed on velvet cushions, tracing their intricate details with genuine appreciation. Her expression remained unreadable, calm, collected, unbothered. This indifference irritated Victoria more profoundly than any confrontational response would have. Had Margot reacted defensively, it would have validated Victoria's perceived superiority. But being completely disregarded, treated as if her opinion carried no significance, that was an insult Victoria couldn't tolerate. A slight sneer formed at the corner of Victoria's mouth. She adjusted her immaculate white fur coat and advanced with deliberate purpose. This time, she abandoned all pretense of subtlety, projecting her voice to ensure everyone within the boutique would hear. "Oh, sweetheart, are you lost? The costume jewelry section is in the mall next door." The effect was immediate and palpable. The ambient sounds of commerce seemed to suspend momentarily. Staff members exchanged uncertain glances, caught between professional neutrality and personal discomfort. A customer examining a gold bracelet paused mid-inspection, subtly redirecting attention toward the unfolding scene. The sales associate who had previously overlooked Margot now watched intently, holding a tray of diamond earrings in suspended animation. Margot's response was masterful in its restraint. She blinked unhurriedly, absorbing Victoria's barbed comment without visible reaction. Her expression remained tranquil, as though the remark had been nothing more consequential than an observation about the weather. Then, with deliberate patience, she traced her fingertips across an emerald ring within the display case. Without making eye contact with Victoria, she offered the faintest of smiles before turning away to examine a different showcase, a clear non-verbal communication that Victoria wasn't worth her attention. The gesture, though subtle, conveyed undeniable power. The tension in the room intensified noticeably. Victoria blinked rapidly, momentarily disoriented by this unexpected reaction. She had anticipated defensiveness, embarrassment, or perhaps verbal retaliation, not this complete dismissal of her existence. A flush of irritation spread from her chest to her face. Having always commanded attention in such exclusive spaces, being treated as irrelevant was profoundly unsettling. She needed to reassert control over the situation. Before she could formulate her next attack, a new voice interrupted the charged silence. Deep, steady, and casually authoritative, it effortlessly commanded attention from everyone present. "Funny, I was just thinking that class has nothing to do with expensive jewelry." The weight of those words lingered in the atmosphere. The existing silence transformed into something heavier, more significant. Victoria felt an involuntary shiver travel down her spine before she even turned to identify the speaker. The store employees, previously hesitant to engage, now directed their full attention toward the entrance. A customer who had been preparing to exit paused mid-stride, tilting his head slightly toward the source of the voice. Even without visual confirmation, Victoria sensed a fundamental shift in the dynamics. Her pulse quickened inexplicably. Mixing irritation with reluctant curiosity, she turned slowly, and then she saw him. The statement hung in the air with quiet authority. "Funny, I was just thinking that class has nothing to do with expensive jewelry." The impact rippled through the space immediately. Ongoing conversations between sales staff and clients faded into silence. Every individual present seemed to become more alert, more attentive to the charged atmosphere. Victoria experienced an involuntary chill along her spine before she completed her turn toward the speaker. Something about that voice, its depth, its natural confidence, its effortless command of attention, was distinctly familiar. The store employees, who had previously maintained professional neutrality regarding the escalating tension between Margot and Victoria, now directed their undivided attention toward the entrance. Several customers, previously absorbed in evaluating potential purchases, shifted their focus, curiosity evident in their expressions. Margot, however, displayed no surprise. She would recognize that voice anywhere. As Victoria completed her turn, she finally saw him. A tall figure stood just inside the entrance, dressed in a black jacket and leather boots. His posture conveyed relaxed confidence, as though he were simply passing through without particular purpose. Yet his mere presence fundamentally altered the store's energy dynamics. He wore no obvious symbols of status or wealth, no designer labels, no luxury watch, nothing that explicitly communicated exclusivity. Nevertheless, he effortlessly drew more attention than anyone else present. Victoria's pulse accelerated, not from immediate recognition but from something more instinctive she couldn't readily identify. The sales staff subtly straightened their posture. Several customers abandoned all pretense of disinterest and openly observed him. A hushed murmur rippled throughout the space. That's when realization dawned on Victoria. This wasn't just any man. She narrowed her eyes, processing his familiar features, the sharp facial structure, the dark hair, the natural charisma, and most tellingly, the collective reaction of everyone around her. Understanding struck with the force of lightning. Tom Cruise. The Tom Cruise. His identity blazed in her consciousness with unmistakable clarity. Victoria felt heat rushing to her face as her shoulders tensed involuntarily. Her pride battled against the undeniable reality confronting her. Because if this was indeed Tom Cruise, then the woman in jeans and a black turtleneck whom she had attempted to humiliate wasn't just any modest dresser, she was Margot Robbie. Victoria's stomach contracted painfully as a conflicting wave of hot and cold sensation washed over her. She had just publicly insulted one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses. And now, standing just feet away, was one of the industry's most universally respected figures, a living legend whose reputation for genuine kindness was as renowned as his acting talent. The weight of this realization settled upon her with crushing force. Tom adjusted his jacket collar unhurriedly. His gaze connected briefly with Margot, a silent communication passing between them that spoke of years of friendship and mutual respect. Then he turned his attention directly to Victoria. The moment lasted only a second, but its impact was profound. He didn't immediately speak, he didn't need to. The weight of his gaze, calm yet penetrating, struck Victoria with the force of physical contact. There was no overt judgment, no expression of superiority. But there was something far more devastating, the undeniable truth. Victoria realized instantly that Tom had comprehensive understanding of the situation. No explanation was necessary. He had witnessed everything, heard everything. And his expression communicated volumes, he was distinctly unimpressed. Victoria's throat constricted. For perhaps the first time in her adult life, she felt the instinctive urge to retreat. The store employees, now fully cognizant of the celebrities in their presence, subtly adjusted their demeanor. A sales associate who had previously hesitated to assist Margot suddenly straightened his tie and displayed newfound attentiveness. Customers exchanged glances, some whispering in astonished recognition, "Oh my God! Is that Tom Cruise?" Another nodded in silent confirmation, "And he's with Margot Robbie?" The jewelry boutique, previously filled with individuals focused exclusively on their luxury acquisitions, now possessed a unified focal point, the unfolding human drama before them. Victoria inhaled slowly, attempting to regain composure. But internally, she experienced the sensation of having absorbed a direct physical blow. Her thoughts raced frantically. She needed to say something, anything, a clever retort, a sophisticated observation, some verbal maneuver to recover her position. But for the first time in recent memory, words failed her completely. Because there was, quite simply, nothing she could say. The silence surrounding her felt deafening in its implications. She blinked rapidly, redirecting her gaze toward Margot. The actress's expression remained unchanged, calm, unbothered, as though she had known with absolute certainty that no verbal defense was necessary. For Victoria, that silent confidence was perhaps the most devastating aspect of the entire encounter. Tom finally offered a small smile, though not directed at Victoria. He turned toward Margot, his tone shifting to warm familiarity. "Sandy, that necklace would look perfect on you." The silence deepened further. Employees held their breath in collective anticipation. Customers exchanged wide-eyed glances of disbelief. Victoria felt her stomach plummet to new depths as the full weight of the moment pressed upon her consciousness. The atmosphere in the jewelry store felt suspended in time, heavy with unresolved tension. The previous backdrop of refined conversation and elegant transactions had been replaced by something far more primal, the universal human experience of witnessing someone's public humiliation. Store employees exchanged discreet glances loaded with unspoken meaning. The customers, despite attempts at appearing disinterested, couldn't resist monitoring the unfolding drama. Victoria felt it most acutely, something entirely unfamiliar to her experience. For years, she had dominated spaces like this one. She had always dictated the social hierarchy, determining who deserved acknowledgement and who warranted dismissal. Never before had she found herself in the position of needing to justify her presence or worth. Yet here stood Margot Robbie, who had never deigned to acknowledge her provocations. And beside her, Tom Cruise, who had transformed the entire dynamic with a single perceptive comment. Victoria felt her face flush with heat, but her pride refused surrender. She would not exit this encounter in defeat. Adjusting her immaculate white fur coat across her shoulders, she raised her chin defiantly. If Tom believed he could permanently alter the social dynamic with one observation, he was profoundly mistaken. She turned toward Margot, her voice deliberately polite yet unmistakably laced with subtle venom. Women like us need to maintain a certain standard. She traced her fingers along her diamond necklace, intentionally catching the light to highlight the stone's brilliance. The implication was unmistakable. Victoria was attempting to re-establish her perceived position of superior sophistication. Margot remained unfazed. Her expression didn't flicker with discomfort or uncertainty. She displayed no visible reaction whatsoever, regarding Victoria with the detached interest of someone observing a predictable scene from an overfamiliar film. Tom then moved closer, his presence shifting from background influence to undeniable central focus. His movements were unhurried, they didn't need to be. Each step carried implicit authority that Victoria couldn't dismiss. Then he did something entirely unexpected. Looking directly at Margot, he stated without hesitation, "Robbie, that necklace would look perfect on you." The impact was immediate and profound. The previous silence transformed into something almost suffocating in its intensity. Victoria felt her stomach contract painfully. The significance of his word choice registered with crushing clarity, Robbie, not Margot. He had addressed her by her professional surname, the name that required no introduction or explanation. That single detail forced Victoria to confront her error in the most humiliating possible manner. She hadn't merely attempted to belittle an ordinary woman with modest fashion sense, she had tried to publicly humiliate Margot Robbie, one of the most respected actresses in Hollywood. And now Tom Cruise stood beside her in obvious solidarity. The store employees reached the same realization simultaneously. The sales associate who had previously ignored Margot now adopted immediately a significantly more professional demeanor. Customers whispered among themselves, "They know each other? Oh my God, she really tried to put down Margot Robbie. Unbelievable." Victoria felt humiliation constricting around her with the tightness of physical restraint. Throughout her adult life, she had consistently been the most influential person in any room she entered. But now, in the very space where she had expected to reign supreme, she found herself completely outmatched in terms of genuine status and public admiration. This realization ignited her indignation. Victoria had never been one to concede defeat easily. Her social survival had always depended on her ability to manipulate situations to her advantage. This encounter would be no different. Forcing an artificial smile, she addressed Tom directly, her voice deliberately light, as though choosing to engage in friendly banter rather than acknowledging her social misstep. "You're right, Tom. True luxury isn't just about what we wear. But let's be honest, a little refinement never hurt anyone." She spoke with calculated casualness, ostensibly agreeing while actually refusing to acknowledge her error. Tom, however, refused the conversational diversion. He simply regarded her with that same steady, penetrating gaze that seemed to perceive beyond surface appearances. Then he delivered a statement that completely dismantled Victoria's carefully maintained composure. "You know, I've always found it funny how some people try to seem superior. But in the end, what really matters is how we treat others." This time, there was no possibility of pretending the comment hadn't affected her. His words struck with precision accuracy. Victoria felt embarrassment penetrating to her core. The employees observed her reaction carefully, anticipating her response. Customers exchanged knowing glances, barely concealing their satisfaction at witnessing this moment of social justice. And Margot simply smiled. Not a smug expression of victory, not a vindictive smirk, just a simple, natural smile. And somehow, that understated reaction was the most devastating element of the entire encounter. The weight of Tom's observation became unbearable. Victoria acutely felt the collective judgment surrounding her. For perhaps the first time in her adult memory, she found herself without an effective verbal response. Her face burned with shame as her pulse pounded audibly in her ears. She could attempt to defend herself, perhaps craft a cutting retort. But what purpose would it serve? The outcome was already determined. She had lost this encounter completely. Victoria Winchester, the woman who had always controlled social narratives, now found herself entirely without control. Her white fur coat, previously a symbol of sophisticated affluence, now felt constrictive and oppressive. She needed immediate escape from this situation. Margot, displaying complete self-assurance, turned to the sales associate and stated with calm authority, "I'll take that necklace." There was no questioning inflection, no hint of uncertainty in her decision. The salesperson, now entirely focused on her celebrity customer, nodded eagerly and moved quickly to package the selected item. Tom simply crossed his arms, directing an unreadable glance toward Victoria. She felt her throat constrict painfully. Never before had she experienced such profound social diminishment. Without attempting further conversation, she turned sharply and exited quickly, clutching her phone with unnecessary force. She desperately needed escape from this humiliating scenario. Yet deep within, she recognized an uncomfortable truth: this experience of public humiliation would remain indelibly imprinted in her memory. Victoria exited the jewelry boutique rapidly, her heels producing sharp percussive sounds against the polished marble flooring. Her heart raced uncomfortably as she gripped her phone with excessive force. Even after physically leaving the store, she couldn't escape the sensation of being observed and judged. The crisp Beverly Hills atmosphere contacted her flushed face, yet provided no relief from the burning humiliation coloring her cheeks. Throughout her adult life, she had maintained absolute control in similar social scenarios. She had consistently commanded the final word in any confrontation. But now, for the first time in recent memory, she experienced complete powerlessness. She walked without specific destination along the sidewalk, attempting to process the encounter. The profound humiliation. Tom's quiet yet authoritative presence. The way Margot had never acknowledged her provocations yet somehow emerged victorious from their interaction. Victoria unlocked her phone and scrolled aimlessly through social media, passing posts without genuine attention. Nothing captured her focus effectively. Everything suddenly seemed inconsequential. Tom's words echoed persistently in her consciousness: what really matters is how we treat others. She clenched her jaw reflexively. She wanted desperately to dismiss the incident as meaningless, a simple misunderstanding without significance. But honesty forced her to acknowledge an uncomfortable truth. She recognized her behavior had been inappropriate. And worse, everyone present had witnessed her humiliation. As Victoria retreated, the atmosphere within the jewelry boutique gradually normalized. Customers who had been captivated by the unfolding drama returned reluctantly to their shopping activities. Yet a distinctive energy lingered in the environment. The sales associate returned with a velvet presentation box, carefully opening it to display the necklace Margot had selected. She studied it thoughtfully before glancing toward Tom with a subtle smile. "You think it suits me?" Tom smirked slightly, crossing his arms. "Robbie, everything suits you." Margot laughed softly, shaking her head in amused disagreement. The store employees, who had previously ignored her presence, now stood at complete attention, eager to provide impeccable service. Margot noticed this dramatic shift in their behavior but chose not to comment. She had extensive experience with such situational transformations in how people treated her. With calm confidence, she presented her payment card and completed the transaction. She had never needed to verbally assert her worth or status. Her dignified silence had constituted her most effective response. That composed restraint had delivered the most significant impact to Victoria's inflated self-importance. Victoria eventually ceased walking. She found herself positioned before another luxury boutique, though she didn't focus on the merchandise displayed. Instead, her own reflection stared back at her from the polished window, and she found the image distinctly unsatisfying. She had never previously considered the implications of her behavior. Such reflection had seemed unnecessary. Her social circle had consistently comprised individuals sharing her values, people who appreciated her cutting observations, who reinforced her belief that financial status and external appearance represented the only meaningful metrics of personal worth. But now, for the first time, she perceived herself differently. The jewelry store encounter had forced an uncomfortable realization. The deference she received wasn't genuine respect, it was fear-based compliance. And a profound distinction existed between those two responses. Tom and Margot had displayed no fear of her social power. They hadn't reacted with defensive anger or attempted to publicly diminish her. They had simply demonstrated, without explicit statement, that her perceived influence had always been largely illusory. That revelation constituted the most profound humiliation she had ever experienced. Victoria inhaled deeply, briefly closing her eyes. The truth proved painful to acknowledge. Yet simultaneously, she experienced an unexpected emotional response, relief. Because at some deeper level, she had grown weary of maintaining her carefully constructed facade. Tired of performing a role that provided no genuine fulfillment. Perhaps the time had arrived for meaningful change. Hours later, Victoria sat in her parked vehicle, still holding her phone indecisively. She had opened her social media application repeatedly, but remained uncertain what message to communicate. Finally, gathering her resolve, she began typing. "Today, I learned that you can buy diamonds, but you can't buy class. Thank you, Margot Robbie and Tom Cruise, for this valuable lesson." She hesitated briefly, then without excessive analysis, pressed the post button. She had no clear expectation regarding potential responses. But for perhaps the first time, she discovered their opinions held diminished importance. Perhaps this moment marked the beginning of personal transformation. Perhaps, for the first time, she would genuinely learn from experience. Her phone screen darkened automatically, but one unexpected comment captured her attention. "The first step toward change is recognizing where we went wrong." She reread that sentence multiple times. Change. She had never previously considered its necessity. Never believed personal transformation was required. But now, for the first time, she contemplated, what if? What if, rather than perceiving this as merely damage to her ego, she recognized it as an opportunity for growth? What if, instead of dismissing the encounter, she actually extracted meaningful lessons from it? Victoria didn't possess immediate answers. But for the first time, she genuinely desired to discover them. Victoria remained seated, watching Margot's distinctive figure disappear into the crowd. She experienced something unfamiliar, something she identified, with surprise, as emotional relief. She remained uncertain of its complete significance. But she recognized that in this moment, she had made a different choice than her typical pattern would have dictated. And perhaps, this represented the authentic beginning of personal transformation. Victoria closed her eyes momentarily. She could easily revert to her previous existence, returning to her world of exclusive luxury and social competition, pretending this encounter had never occurred. Or she could choose something different. She reopened Instagram. This time, she experienced no hesitation. She began typing with newfound clarity. I've learned that class has nothing to do with financial status. It relates entirely to personal character. I'm still discovering my identity beyond material possessions. But I know I aspire toward improvement, not for social recognition, but for personal authenticity. She reviewed her words, hesitating only momentarily before taking a deep breath and pressing the post button. Notifications began appearing within seconds, likes, shares, supportive comments. But Victoria didn't need to read them to understand this post's significance exceeded anything she had previously shared. Because this time, her motivation wasn't impressing others. It represented a truth she was finally prepared to acknowledge. She remained uncertain whether this change would prove permanent. But she recognized that for the first time, the prospect of transformation didn't frighten her. And perhaps, that constituted sufficient beginning. Thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoy this video, and learned a lesson. I would be grateful for your likes. Also don't forget to subscribe and comment on the video. See you soon.